Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. Hi, this is Craig. Just want to let you know you can now advertise here on Everyone Loves Guitar podcast. For more information, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. We've got a really great guitar player, super talented, and a really cool guy. We're with Jason Orme, and I just want to say a shout out to Steve Mazer, I think, hooked us up, right?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks to Steve Mazer from Our Lady Peace for putting us together. Good guy. All right, Jason started playing at 14. He worked in his local guitar shop in Simi Valley. I've never said that word, Simi Valley. I always see that like on TV. It seems like a really cool place. It sounds really cool. I don't know what it's like.
It was a good place to grow up.
Simi Valley was cool. Is that like when they say the Valley? Is that?
No, it's funny because Simi, and some people say Simi. It's a
Simi,
Chumash Indian word, but Simi Valley is what everybody says. But it's sort of when you're in the valley, which is San Fernando Valley. If you keep going, kind of over the next little overpass and over some hills, then you're in Simi Valley, which is its own little sort of enclave spot. Yeah.
So this is north of San Fernando Valley.
Kind of northwest of San Fernando Valley. Yeah.
Very cool.
It's actually in Ventura County. You cross a county line of LA County to get to Simi Valley.
Oh, that's interesting. So, okay, LA, and see, I'm learning all this about California.
Yeah, it's very like the Valley is the 818 area code, and Simi Valley is the 805 area code. So I have friends that grew up there, and we always go 805. You know, like that's our little like.
It's like the Jets and the Sharks. All right. So he grew up in Simi Valley, and he was able to quit working. And we're going to talk about this because I've had a lot of guys on the show who work for this group, Perfect World Entertainment, as a full-time guitar player. In November 2001, Jason got an audition for Alanis Morissette's band, and he got that gig, and he's played with her ever since, which has led to loads of other opportunities to work with loads of other artists and solo projects. He played on Alanis's record, which is So-Called Chaos and Jagged Little Pill acoustic set that she did in 2005, and also live in Montreux 2012 at the Montreux Jazz Festival, which was a CD and a DVD, and he appeared in Alanis's Feast on Scraps live DVD. He has his own studio in Hollywood that he calls Back Porch Studios, where he writes, records, and produces up-and-coming acts. And he has a 4-song EP coming out soon called Letters and Radio, and we'll talk about that. He's also worked with, besides Alanis Morissette, Sarah McLachlan. Are those two, like, is that like the triumvirate? Like when you work for one, you have to work for another one? Like every guitar player has worked for one. It's like you get them both or nothing. What's the deal?
So many people say that. It's funny. Yeah. They're like, man, you work for a lot of female artists. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's my niche. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, it's funny when I look at you don't always look at a list of people you've played with. And then I look at it and I go, oh, I've worked with a lot of, and they're both from kind of famous in the 90s.
Yeah.
Where they began. And yeah, so it's interesting.
Both have great voices,
Both incredible artists for sure. Yeah.
Definitely, man. Okay. So he's worked with Alanis, Sarah McLachlan, Dave, is it Gahan or Gahan?
I always hear Dave Gahan. Yeah. From
Simi, tomato. Natasha Bedingfield. I know another, did you know Luca Campaner?
That name sounds familiar.
He played
did some of the people on the list I've done one gig with.
Okay.
But it's in the end, like you said, in the interest of self-promotion, like, I have to go, well, okay, I did work with them, I guess. So
absolutely, man. If it's
worst bio maker ever. So I just have to go.
This is pretty good. But this was I want to ask you about this one later. Deepak Chopra. I didn't expect him to be on your list of artists.
It's kind of a fun one to put on there, but yeah.
Good. Well, we'll talk about that for sure. Michelle Branch, Idina Menzel, Daniel Powder, Five for Fighting, which I spoke to someone else who played with him last week, Kelly Clarkson, and more. As I said, Jason's got a number of projects on his own, Letters and Radio. They have an EP coming out soon. The Desktop Rulers with Joe Carnes, great bass player, and Joel Shearer, another great guitar player. I interviewed both those guys on the show. Very cool people. Big Red Button was another project. Friends with Money, which was a movie starring Jennifer Aniston, and Rookie Blue, which is a TV show he did. And also, so I don't screw this up,
those were TV, a movie and a TV show that I had songs in from those projects.
Oh, okay. What you mean Big Red Button?
Big Red Button had a song in Friends with Money, and then Desktop Rulers had a song on Rookie Blue.
Okay, cool. And then there's something, Tara who?
That's a group that I produced. I just did their second. We've done 2 EPs now for them, and then a friend of mine and I also co-produced a band called Night Talks. It's a local LA band.
Very cool. That sounds like either a local LA band or a new porn movie, Night Talks.
Right.
Like from the 70s, though. I would think they've updated the porn genre. Yes. Not that I've watched. I researched a project one time.
Research purposes.
Yes, only. It's like weed. Anyway, man, we didn't even start and this is out of control. Jason, your first full-time job playing music was working with Perfect World Entertainment. Those are the guys, they put together theme bands. Is that correct?
You could say that. Yeah. The original thing that got really popular with them was called the Boogie Nights, which is basically guys dressed up in 70s kind of, style outfits and wigs and afros, and there was dance music. It was all the hits, Bee Gees and Casey and the Sunshine Band and Kool and the Gang and every disco hit that you can think of. And there were a few different versions of the band as well with different names. And so that was really popular for about 5 or 6 years. And then it's sort of morphed. That still happens. They still do that band. And then there's another band called the Spasmatics.
Spasmatics. I know a bunch of guys
where you
play
dress up like nerds and play all the 80s kind of rock and dance music. And so for me, it was an opportunity to do something, because I had been working in this guitar shop in Simi Valley where I grew up. I started working there when I was 15.
Oh, wow.
Like on the weekends. And then when I graduated high school, they gave me just sort of more full-time work. And I just, at the time it was the 80s, I could grow my hair long and have a band and have this job where I could buy gear cheap and meet lots of people and promote my band that I was in and whatever. And, cut to like my late 20s and I'm still working there. Like I had this job, I was managing the store. I was learning a lot. I was meeting a lot of players. But a dear friend of mine came in who was working with the disco bands, and he said, you really should come check this out. We're making really good money. And at the time I thought being in a cover band meant you had to play like 3 or 4 sets a night and each guy makes like $50.
Yeah.
So I always was like, well, I'm just going to keep trying to do my own thing and have my own band and try to be successful that way. And then when he told me how much money they were making, I went, really?
They make good money. That's what everybody's told me. Yeah.
Well, and I went and saw it too. And it's, it's not, it's like a show.
Yeah.
You get to kind of do a little acting and goofing around. And also the musicians that are involved are the highest quality, like guys, like, and the coolest guys. Like I have some of my best friends because of that work. Like we have so much fun and we travel. And I mean, at the time, at the height of that gig, I was probably doing 200 gigs a year, and
holy smokes! So you were freaking really busy.
Yeah, and I had gigs in Vegas that like I left guitars in Vegas because we were flying there every week, and so it was like a regular gig. But the great thing was that I could also still I still had my own bands at home. I was still writing and trying to do that stuff too. So
now. You mentioned we were talking about Ray Luzier that I had interviewed from Korn, but isn't Perfect World, didn't they start the band that eventually became Steel Panther as well?
Right. It was called, originally it was called Metal Shop. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Ray was in that band.
He was, yeah. He was the first guy. And it was, I'll use his stage name, Michael, the singer. people on guitar who are all guys that I know, and Lexi, the bass player. All those guys were
Can I tell you something funny? When I interviewed, I can only think of his real name, from Steel Panther.
The guitar player?
Yes. What's his stage name?
Satchel.
When I interviewed Satchel, when he came on, he had his wig, he had his gear on.
Yeah.
And I said, first name. Because I'm not allowed, he said nobody knows his first name. I'm like, dude, look at Wikipedia.
Right.
Because I've never put that there. I said, okay, therefore it doesn't exist. Okay, I got you. I said, this is not live, like in reference to his wig and stuff. He goes, I know.
Right.
Because I know. I'm like, okay, man. Maybe, that's commitment, man. It's,
commitment, yeah.
I was like, whoa, okay, that's, but I know that I've talked to loads of people that have worked with them and still work with them. They do really well. And it's just a great way to play with great musicians and still have a career on the side if you want one.
It's been the kind of thing that even after I started like touring with Alanis and stuff, when I would come home, I'd call the guy that runs it and just go, hey, I'm back. I'm around if you have gigs, because I like being able to keep working as a musician. So it's great. And so, still, I have gigs coming up with them.
That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah. So how did you get the gig initially with Alanis? And
you wouldn't believe how many times we hear that.
Yeah. And has this changed at all over the years?
Has the gig changed?
Yeah. Like has either the gig or your role in it or
Oh, yeah, I guess so. I got the gig because, my friend Joel, who you spoke to, Joel and I have known each other since we were like really like teenagers. His dad worked at the guitar shop, building and repairing guitars that I worked at. So when I met Joel, he's a little younger than me. So when we met, he was just a kid. You know what I mean? Like I knew him as he, and then we met again later. He had gone through puberty and you know what I mean?
Oh, so like you was 17 and he was 12 maybe or something like that. Yeah. That's
so it's a funny
that
connection.
Is funny.
But anyway, so he started playing with her in the 90s and then called me up because she was sort of basically he called me and he goes, hey man, I got fired. I was like, what? And he's like, oh no, I'm on good terms. Everything's fine. And she's just going to hire a whole new band. This is sort of the short story, I guess, is, and I said, okay. And he said, and I put your name in for an audition. And I was like, and he had called me from time to time about different artists who were touring and do I want to go to check out this audition or that one? And most of the time I would turn it down because the money that I was making staying home
with Perfect World.
Yeah. And I was making more money doing that and I could still stay home and do my own thing. Like I kept wanting to be an artist and write and sort of try to, have some kind of band situation. And so he said, yeah, you should go audition. And my initial reaction was, that sounds a little strange. Like, I don't want to take your job like that. I feel weird about that. No. He said, it's fine. I told them I would recommend some people. And I remember then saying yes. And the day of the audition, I actually called him and I said, are you sure about this, man? I don't know if I feel comfortable, cause I had never been in that world of the sort of, lack of better term, sideman.
Yeah, sure.
World. I knew nothing about it really, except that I knew Joel and he was, playing with her. So he said, no, go down. So I went down and it was just an audition. I walked in and she already had a keyboard player and a bass player. And so she was looking for a guitar player, 2 guitar players and a drummer. And, so yeah, I went in on a Friday. I'll never forget. I was living with, my girlfriend at the time. And I went in and I looked around and I knew the keyboard player a little bit, who's now a dear friend, Zach Ray, who's an amazing musician. And the bass player at the time was Eric Avery, who was originally in Jane's Addiction. Okay. So I was a Jane's Addiction fan and I thought, well, either way I get to play with Eric. That's kind of fun. But the other guitar player that was auditioning had really long black hair and a bright green, like ESP kind of, like SG shaped guitar, like fluorescent green. And we couldn't have looked more different, right?
Yeah.
Like the Les Paul and kind of like a bit of a small pedal board. And I learned they said learn a few songs. So I learned the songs and I just remember looking at the other guy and going, okay, well, they either want that or they want me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see what happens. And so they said, thank you very much. I went home. And the next day I got a phone call. Hey, just wondering if you could come down again today. And Alanis wasn't there that day. So wondering if you could come down again today and play with Alanis. I said, sure. And this was right down the street from where I lived, the rehearsal room. And so I got there, and this time it was my pal Dave Levita, who wound up getting the gig as well. And they wanted to hear us play together. So we played.
Did you know Dave? Had you know Dave at the time? Okay, so he was. So it was like a little stressful.
It was, you know what? Yeah, a little bit. Well, at this point, I was just feeling kind of like I didn't know what to expect. So I just kind of was like, okay, I'll show up and do it. Let's see what happens. And it's funny because part of me was like, if I get this gig, I'll get to go to Europe. I've never been to Europe. So that's kind of exciting. Like because I wasn't in the auditioning world. Yeah. I don't think I had the same nerves and same, I hate to call it desperation, but like,
no, I totally get it. You didn't have the, this wasn't your thing, your thing that you're doing and how you measured yourself or how you were somehow evaluated.
Ignorance was bliss, let's say.
Yeah.
Like
you were removed from that. Yeah.
Great. So I really wanted the gig because business on the other things I was doing was getting a little slow. So it came at a great time, to be honest. So I really wanted to get it, but I was still kind of like, I didn't know what the process was necessarily. So we played again. She was there. She was lovely. And thanks so much. See you later. And I went home again. And then I get a call that night. I get another call. Hey, this is management. We're just wondering if you could come in again tomorrow. Alanis wanted to hear you play with another guitar player. And I went, sure. And I came down. So to this time, it was this female guitar player who I recognized, who's an amazing musician. And I was like, wow, this is okay. And so we played again. Alanis was there. Thank you very much. Awesome. And I went home. Now I was getting a little antsy. Now I got home and my girlfriend was going, what's going on? I said, I don't know, but I hope they tell me something. Like, this is a little nerve-wracking. I don't know what's happening. So the phone rings that night again. Hey, Jason. Hey, loved having you today. Wondering if you can come again tomorrow. So this is the fourth day, Monday.
At least they didn't ask you to bring in a green SG.
Yeah.
Can you come? Do you have any green guitar?
Yeah. So I show up the next day, and this time it's Dave is back.
Okay.
My friend, and Alanis is there, and they stop me in the parking lot and say, "Hey, we'd love to offer you the gig." And I was thrilled.
Like before you even went in?
Before I even went in.
Okay.
I said, oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I'd love the gig. And it was this tour manager at the time. And he said, today we have a couple drummers that we want to check out. So Alanis will be here and we just want to have you play with these drummers. And so we did. And at the end of the day, she sat down with us and said, so, you guys are the one that's going to travel with this guy on your bus. So which drummer did you like?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was kind of cool. Like I immediately really thought she was super cool.
Yeah. Because
it wasn't like her. I think she trusted that, whoever we felt comfortable with, she whoever was there. And so it was hard because the drummers were great, all of them. But there was one guy, this guy, Blair Cinta, who was the guy who played with us with the Desktop Rulers project.
Yeah.
And we just all kind of agreed that he seemed like the right fit. And so, yeah, that was it.
Let me ask you this. I don't want numbers at all, but for me, my education, when someone says to you, are you interested in the gig? Do they also tell you at the same time, it pays this?
My memory is, I think they gave us an idea pretty quick of like, here's what it pays. Here's, here's how it work. You're going to start. We started immediately. She had just finished a record. So the first thing we did was go on a promo tour, which at the time she was on Warner Brothers. And we did like every TV show you could think of in the States, every TV show in Europe, Japan, South America. Like it was.
Wow. What a great gig? First, like like, you know,
It was
a lot of times people's first gigs, we hit the road right away. We were burning up miles in that van.
Yep.
You know, that's so
funny.
cool.
You had, I don't remember who it was. You had someone on the other day that I listened to, and they talked about that they got to bypass the van period.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go right to a tour bus or something. And I went, wow, I'm glad I'm not the only one. Cause I always felt a little, you know, like bashful about like, oh man, I've been kind of lucky in that respect, but
yeah, there's nothing to feel bashful about. It's like, you know, luck, you know, it's a lot of this business. I think life is kind of like that, you know, timing, maybe not necessarily luck, or maybe call it luck and timing. You know, it's why does some things happen to some guys now and other guys 20 years from now? You just don't know, you know?
Yeah.
But that's really cool though. So, okay. I was just curious and I wasn't like trying to be nosy. I apologize if it came off like that. I didn't know how that process worked, because I know musicians are so awkward with like money and business. I could almost see them saying, hey, do you want the gig? And not even not them per se, Alanis's people, but like the bad music industry people, you know, hey, do you want this gig? And then just like not telling you, and then telling you like what you get paid when you're out on the first, you know, when you're in another country or something like that. And then, you know, cause I've heard stories of that too, where, you know, they were in another country, they didn't get paid, and guys like had no money and they had to fly home and like,
oh my God.
But you know, they're stuck in Serbia or something. And again, they have to have all the friends pool money together. So I don't know, but thank you. I didn't know how that works.
I've been really lucky in that respect. And you're right. Negotiating pay is not the most comfort zone, not the biggest comfort zone, I think, for a lot of musicians, but I think it's also because that's not, well, I'll speak for myself. It's not my line of work, right? Like I'm constant. The thing that I'm most practiced at is being a musician and playing music. So then when someone says, so what, let's talk money. And then I have to go, oh shit. Right. I have to put that hat on, and I've gotten better with it over the years for sure. But it's always that spot where you go, oh man, okay, I have to recognize like what the gig is. I have to recognize my own worth. I have to recognize and stand up for myself in a certain way. And, you know,
and it's important shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really important. Yeah.
And there's a lot of misunderstandings too. Like I've had things before where I think maybe sometimes someone thought, like there was one gig that I really wanted, but they were kind of being a little, it was a little hard with the communication, and they weren't telling me, like they weren't always getting back to me with like the information of what the pay was going to be in the schedule. And I already had other gigs lined up where I knew I had, you know, they were kind of important gigs that if I was going to pull out of them, it was going to be a little hard and stressful. And so by the time they were willing to tell me what was happening, I was like, you know what, it's kind of too late. And they, well, what if we pay you a little more? And I was like, actually, it's not that. It's that now the time has gone by that I can't tell these other people that I'm not doing their gig anymore, because it'll just be too stressful for them. And I try my best to go like, well, if I said yes to something, I want to show up and do it. And then whatever I said yes to after that, I want to show, you know what I mean? I don't want to be the guy that's known for bailing on work to necessarily, you know.
The problem is communication in general is at least for me, for sure, it was not something that just came naturally. I had to study. And I think with rare exception, I think most people have to do that, you know, and if there's no opportunity to learn that stuff,
right, you
got to fly by the seat of your pants, which for me, again, was not very good. So I'm glad I studied it, to be honest with you.
It's funny because I didn't go to university or college, and I went to like a semester of college, but when I hear people talk about the school of hard knocks or the school of, you know, life, you know, I went to life, you know, university or what people say, like working in the guitar shop as long as I did and having to have responsibilities there and learning from the guy that owned the place about communicating with people and talking on the phone. And it wasn't a commission sales environment. So I didn't have to be that sort of salesman guy that everyone's, you know, avoids.
Afraid of.
Yeah. I got to
allergic to is probably a better word. Yeah.
Kind of a knowledge-based person who is selling gear that I know about and can offer, you know, this and that. But I also had to deal with every kind of personality you can think of. And some people that were probably a little,
oh, hell yeah,
scary. And like, I remember hearing about people, getting arrested that were like, oh, that guy used to come in the store all the time. Really? That happened? Oh man, that's scary. I had no idea. And, but anyway, it helped me on some level for communication in general in the world. I could kind of operate on some level in the world, but then there's all the other things, that you learn once you get out there, and, especially getting the Alanis gig and kind of realizing, there's, we'd be on these radio shows where there would be other artists with their bands. And I started to meet all these other guys that, I play with this artist, or I play with that artist. And, you start to see this whole world of people that are out playing music and traveling and touring that, work for artists that have hired them. And yeah.
Yeah. I think all this stuff is a much needed, skill set for you guys. For musicians in general, I mean, it's just important. It needs to be more effective. Thank you for sharing that story. That's really cool. How that all worked out. And it was really cool how she took you guys like right away and said, what do you think? And put that on your lap, which you're right. That was very nice. Very kind. It
was really comforting and really, a vote of confidence right away.
Totally.
She was always really open and just, anything you need, come to me. And when she said that to me, I still say it to her. I still say it, like the first day I met you and you said, if you let me know if you need anything or want to talk about anything, the door's open. So I've just, our relationship, I think, has been good because we just have always stuck to that. And
that's good.
She's a great person to work with.
And 13 years, that's like 200 years in music world, right?
Well, long. We were laughing about it the other day. I'm like the lifer. It's been like 17 years.
17 years, right? 01, right?
She's taken some long breaks, but I keep getting called back, so I'm happy to go.
There you go, man. Hey, so let's talk about some of these other artists, and if you could talk about how you wound up connecting with them, and if there's any fun or interesting story. And let's go with Sarah McLachlan, as I mentioned earlier.
Sarah came about because in 2008, Alanis had a keyboard player that toured with us named Vincent Jones, who now is another dear friend of mine. And he was Sarah's sort of like MD keyboard player for a great many years. And she basically was doing about a month of touring and needed a guitar player because her regular guy couldn't do the gigs. So who's a great Canadian guitar player, this guy Luke Doucette, who I don't know if you've ever spoken to Luke, but he'd be a great guy to speak to. But anyway, at the time, they needed someone to do a couple weeks in Australia and a couple weeks in the States. And Peter Stroud was the other guitar player at the time.
That's right.
From Sheryl Crow's band.
Right.
And so it was great. Yeah, we got to I went to Vancouver, I think, and rehearsed and went out and did a bunch of gigs and then a few other things, random things after that. She was on the Emmys, and we did she was the music behind the In Memoriam montage. So we did that, but it was great. She's a fantastic, incredible musician, singer, guitar player.
Great voice, man.
Yeah, like really. And all the people in the band were super talented and really fun to be with. And yeah, it was great.
It's interesting how much goes on behind the scenes musically, like you guys with the backup, the backup band for this Memoriam thing. People don't realize how much like musicians are responsible for what's going on.
Well, it was one of her songs that they picked. So it was just me and Vincent. I think it was just me and Vincent and her, and then there was a house band for the show, which the musical director was Steve Jordan, drummer.
Oh my God!
And the bass player was Daryl Jones from the Stones.
Holy smokes!
So we actually had to go and record a couple things So the cut to we're at Capitol Records. And we had to record a few of the things for the show. And in walk Steve Jordan and Daryl Jones, two of my, like Steve Jordan is such a mind blowing drummer. And so they sat down and, we played with them and Daryl Jones walked in and I had this Gibson acoustic that I like to record with. And he went, "Hey, what do you got there?" And he grabbed, we're talking guitar and he was learning all these, he was saying, yeah, I've been learning all these old Robert Johnson blues tunes, and he's playing them. And I'm just thinking, wow, that's what a nice guy. You know, I'd never met him in my life, but it couldn't have been nicer, you know.
Most people, I think, are it seems like in any industry, the further up the top you get, the nicer the people are.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, you may not, you know, you might not think that, but that's been my experience. You know, I'm sure there's an asshole here and there, but by and large, everybody, I think you have to be nicer to get to the top, you know.
It's hard to keep working and keep being an asshole. I think.
Yeah. You know, and that's in any business. I think
the right little, you know, sort of group of people to travel with that tolerate all of that. You know what I mean? It depends, I guess. But yeah, I think you're right. I think most people that are talented are also gracious and cool, and you know, hopefully.
So, yeah, right. Okay, Natasha Bedingfield.
That was like on the list of people that we talked about. Like that was a one-time kind of. I think I only did one thing with her. It was the Ellen show, and my friend Zach, who was playing keyboards with Alanis, called me up because she was performing a song on Ellen, and it was really cool. It was Zach on keyboards and me on guitar, and I got to do kind of spacey, kind of atmospheric, moody kind of guitar, and she's an incredible singer. So it was fun to kind of rehearse with her and do the show. And yeah, she was.
Dude, you've been on every show.
It's weird. Yeah, it's a weird thing because there's a friend of mine that I went to high school with that is a great musician. This friend Brett, and we were talking on the phone one day, and he said, you know, don't you ever get nervous about that stuff, man, on the TV shows? Like it's millions and millions of people that see those. And I swear up until that moment that I hadn't put it.
You never give it a thought.
I'd never given it those terms of how many people actually see those things. And it was the first time I thought, oh shit, man, what did I do on that show? What did I wear? How did I play? You know what I mean? Like it gave me a moment of a little bit of that, but no, most of the time I don't get nervous. It's more just exciting and fun that you get to, you know, like be on Letterman or something like that, be on these iconic shows that you grew up watching, and all of a sudden there you are. And so, yeah. Is
there a best of? What would be the best experience of the TV shows? First one that comes to mind.
God, first one that comes to mind, honestly, is we went to London for, you know how we have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here in London. They do a UK Hall of Fame, Rock Hall of Fame. And they asked Alanis, Bob Dylan was being inducted. It was only the second year they did it, I guess. And Bob Dylan was one of the inductees, but he wasn't going to be there. So I guess he picked Alanis to sing. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So we got to perform a couple of Bob Dylan songs.
That's weird. How do you get to be Bob Dylan's pick to go? That's
I have no clue. I was like thrilled.
Yeah.
Fan. So I was like, we are going to what? You know? And so it's super exciting, but also nerve wracking. But the other people inducted on that show were Jimi Hendrix.
Holy crap.
The Kinks, I think Black Sabbath or Ozzy or Aretha Franklin. Like it was crazy. We walked into the building, and the first person I saw when I walked in backstage was Brian May.
Holy shit.
To a bunch of people. And that's how I felt. Yeah. I went like, it was really like watching a cartoon, like, cause he's such a presence, and his hair and everything. It was like, I remember just thinking, holy shit, what a rock star like that. Brian May standing in front of me, you know?
That seemed a little surreal, kind of.
It was kind of surreal. And Pete Townsend was there, you know, like that. It was, I've told the story to my friends, but I didn't meet him, but he was sitting directly in front of me when we were on stage performing. He was about 6 rows back on the aisle, and I'm such a Pete Townsend dork. And so I looked at him, and I realized he was looking at me. I was holding this Takamine guitar that I was playing at the time, and this acoustic. And when I looked at him, I realized he was looking at me, but not at me, like at the guitar. And I was like, wow, he's kind of checking out my guitar.
He wants to see what you're playing like everybody else.
You know, and his eyes sort of went up to my eyes, and I went, oh shit, now he's looking at me. And I did sort of I sort of bowed my head like a little head nod, like, hello, sir, like tip of the hat.
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
He just went, and he did the same back to me.
Oh, that is so cool.
nodded his head back, and I thought I was going to jump out of my shoes. And then
that is great.
And then I thought, okay, now we have to play these 2 Bob Dylan songs. I hope we sound good. and I caught a couple little glimpses of him while we were playing, tapping his foot and stuff. And I thought, okay. And then we finished, and I looked up, and he was looking at me again, and I did the same thing. I just sort of nodded my head again, and he smiled and nodded back, and I was like jumping out of my seat. Like I thought,
that's
okay,
cool,
that's it.
man.
I didn't even need to say hi. That was the greatest thing you could have done for me, was just give me a little nod. Thanks, Pete.
I give you credit. You didn't come back from England and say, hey, guys, I got to tell you about when me and Pete Townsend hung out.
That'll be when I'm a grandfather.
Yeah. It's like a fish story.
Hey, me and Pete Townsend were having drinks. It'll turn into some tall story. Yeah,
absolutely, man. Oh God. Was did you get to play or like interact with any of these guys musically, like Ray or Dave Davies or something like that?
No, there was not really an opportunity for that kind of thing. No, it was just sort of like, I mean, I've had those things happen where I've played certain gigs where, like I just did my friend Chris Stills, who's Steven Stills' son.
Yeah.
I've played with Chris a few times just locally and a couple travel things here and there, but his dad does this autism benefit. And so I got to kind of play with Chris did a song. So I played with Chris, and the Steve Ferroni from Tom Petty's band was playing drums, and Ben Montench was playing keyboard. So it was exciting to play with them.
That's really cool.
On that event last year. And so sometimes you get thrown in with people that you go, wow, it's kind of exciting.
God, that's got to be a lot of pressure being Steven Stills' kid. Like when just unknowing people meet you, that's got to be like, your dad's one of the most,
right.
I mean, that guy like changed the face of music, man.
Well, and think about how many of those are out there making music. The kids of these sort of rock and roll royalty people, that are so super talented. That, I mean, Chris is like, he's a crazy talented guy. Like his voice is unbelievable. But if you look at a picture of Steven Stills from like 1971 and you look at Chris, you go, oh my God. Like,
same thing. They look at that.
Yeah, it looks,
they
look just like each other. It's crazy. But he's a great, musician in his own right. But yeah, I imagine if you're the child of a wildly famous person, you have a lot of stuff.
Well, he's not even, it's beyond his fame. He was at the guy like him was at the epicenter of like every cultural and music change of that day, and caused much of it in many ways.
For sure. So. Yeah, no doubt.
Deepak Chopra, that was like not an artist I was expecting to read on anyone's list, frankly. What was the deal with that?
It's funny because when I had to write the list of like who I've worked with, I went, oh, I should write down that my friend, a dear friend of mine named Adam Plack, is a composer, and turns out he was Deepak's sort of music, I don't know what you call it, music guy. Like he was the guy who put together a lot of this background music for these CDs that Deepak puts out of him speaking and it'll be this, Deepak Chopra on, love and relationships or remember exactly what the one we did was, but he was asking me about something and I said, well, we can come do some stuff at my studio if you want. And so I wound up playing like atmospheric things. And then he wanted me to play some nylon string guitar, which I'm not by any means a great classical guitar player or finger picker, but I have a nylon string guitar and I was able to sort of,
good
with some ideas. And so, we wound up recording. I never met Deepak, but we wound up doing this whole thing and he sent me the CD and it was kind of fun to hear. Like there's his voice, with all this music we did behind.
That's cool. Yeah. It was funny when you were saying, I thought you were going to say, how like sometimes like very well-off people have like sort of Svengali, like gurus of their own.
Yes.
Like I used to know this marketing guy and he had a spiritual advisor. So I thought you were going to say, oh, that my buddy's Deepak's musical advisor, that kind of thing. Like, I'm like, okay, this is funny shit. I want to hear this.
Right.
And like Deepak consults with him before he plays, whatever in the morning, because he's got to get his chakras lined up or something. Right. Like, wow. So he's crazy as well. Anyway.
There was a funny thing. I think they did I can't remember if it ever even came out, but there was a documentary being made about Deepak, and his son was making it. And I think there was a moment where in the movie where Deepak is going to go into this, it was like a week's, what do you call it? Retreat or something, like where he's going to meditate and be with maybe with monks. I can't remember what it was, but he had to give up his phone.
Oh, wow.
There was this funny scene where the son is going, no, you got to give me your phone. And he was like, what? And so even Deepak Chopra was this guy, like whatever he's doing, if he tweets or if he's looking at his social media, I don't know what it was, but it was a funny moment where you go, wow, even this super spiritual guy has to give up his social media while he goes to this retreat.
Wait, I gotta find out what Trump's doing. Come on, what do I?
It was pre-Trump. It was pre that. God knows. No, that's a whole other subject we could spend hours on.
Well, that was cool, man. Thank you for sharing those. Hey, talk about letters and radio, because you got an EP coming out soon, and I know that's a project that's meaningful to you.
It's with my friend John Reinhold, who we know each other from Perfect World Entertainment. He's a singer that we oh man, I could tell you so many funny stories about like playing with him and all the fun that we've had. But he is this great, super soulful singer-songwriter who, I don't know if you know these guys, but it's one of those guys that has had like 3 or 4 record deals. They haven't gone anywhere, but if you are out somewhere and you hear him singing a gig, you'll go, who the hell is that? And why isn't he the most famous guy on TV right now or whatever? He's one of those guys who's just got that voice that is so unique and cool and soulful. And we got together maybe 3 years ago and said, why don't we get together and, play a little bit and maybe write. And he came over and I already had sort of an idea up, like a demo ready, and we wrote it so fast. This song called Devils on the Radio, and I had the title. And
it's a great title.
Thanks. And
that's actually like also a commercial title. Should it, if it can go anywhere, that sounds like one of those.
Oh, right.
It's a good title. Like, it's an acceptable, easy title to
Thanks. Yeah. Well, it means a lot because it came from, the idea behind the song was that I was in a place where I was getting over a tough time in a relationship, which of course, I was trying to get better at songwriting as well. And all the songwriting heroes of mine basically say the same thing, which is write what you know and write something. What do you have to say?
Yeah.
If you're writing a song, what do you have to say? And like, if I'm going to talk, again, about Bob Dylan or the people that are the sort of songwriters that I love the most, whether it's, a light subject or a heavy subject, having something to say, whether it's funny or something sad or something mean, So the idea of Devils on the Radio was because you're maybe in a time where there's like heartbreak, and the music that's coming on the radio all reminds you of the person that you're trying to get over, and you go, oh God,
It's just like adding fuel to the fire that's going on in your head. That's pretty cool, man.
Anyway, so we got
when you write something like that, is that therapeutic at all, or just like transient, like moment? Oh, it is.
Oh yeah, totally.
That's great.
No, I think my wife notices if I'm not playing music enough, I start to go a little crazy.
Yeah.
It's she probably doesn't always understand why I'm kind of just like a zombie, but yeah, no, it's writing and playing music is very, very therapeutic for me personally. But
no, I mean, like when you write about a particular issue, like that issue, that helps. Okay. That's great, man.
No doubt about it.
That's really good.
It gets it out there. And he and I, we're about the same age, and we've been through enough life experience that, we really agreed to sit down and sort of not settle for. We have a really good bullshit radar between the two of us. And there's cool. There's no ego. So if somebody comes up with a lyric, like we'd sit at my studio for hours, and if we left that night with just 2 lines of a verse, we'd be a little sad, but we go, we got those 2 lines. All right, let's come back tomorrow. And if we're sitting there just quietly trying to think of something, and one of us throws something out there, the other guy's, it's fine if the other guy goes, no, that's terrible. Okay. Or if we laugh at each other for, but we're also not afraid to go, this sounds silly, but what about this? But the great thing about doing that is if you offer it, quite often the other person will go, oh.
It's a prompt for the next thing. It's all, you know, you never know, like you can't say this led to that because the dot led to the end, you know, and that's what happens with ideas. Yeah. That's really cool.
So we just kept writing and finally recorded 4 songs and sent them off and got them mixed by a friend of mine. And now they've been kind of sitting there for a while because just life in general, we both have been doing life. And so now this year, I think the goal is to get them out there on in some form. There's a friend of mine that's going to maybe shop them around a little bit, and then we'll probably release the EP in the next month or something.
Great.
There's that song is actually up. If you go to our Facebook page, that song and another one called Wear White are up there right now.
And it's at the Letters and Radio Facebook page?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool, man. And hopefully Jason will...
you can find it on SoundCloud.
Great. And hopefully Jason will come on the show and we could launch or promote the record and everybody check it out. So
that'd be great.
Very cool, man. Well, I wish you a lot of luck with that, and I hope good things come from that, man.
Thank you.
I got to tell you a funny story. This is the listeners like this. You're talking about something about your wife. My wife, I love her dearly, man, and we've been together 26 years, and I couldn't ask for a better person. But there's certain things, like she knows nothing about music. Like we're not musically compatible because she likes like disco. I don't even know. She's not anyway. But she sends me a thing on Facebook. She goes, "You need to get this guy on your show," and it was an article about a musician who is here in Florida for some reason. You know, he's not from here. Is doing something about they're prohibiting. You know, we have pets. We're pet owners. We like pets, and we have cats, and that he's against declawing cats, right? Which I think is a great cause. That's fucking as inhumane as hell,
right?
And so I go to my wife and I said, "Babe, I will try to get Geezer Butler on my show, but I don't really know. It's not a guy that I can like go to this guy and say, hey, can you get me to Geezer Butler, you know, the bass player for Black Sabbath?" I said, "But I will try to get him on the show since she sent me this thing." It was just like funny. Like she had no idea who this was.
Wait, so she just thought it was some random musician that was all about declawing cats, but it turned out to be Geezer Butler.
She didn't know who Geezer Butler was.
That's
it was hilarious. I'm like, I said, "But I will try." And I said, because, you never, if I go to Geezer's people and lead with that, hey, this true funny story, that may be the only reason I get him on the show. Who the hell knows?
To come on and talk about his cause, and meanwhile you get all these great Black Sabbath stories.
Yeah, right. So it was just like it was just hilarious. I'm sorry, I had to get that out, and I don't usually. It was just too funny. I said, "Do you know who that is?" She goes, "No." I said, I said, "He plays with Ozzy Osbourne." She goes, "Oh, I've heard of him."
Good. Yeah. Okay. Black Sabbath?
She wouldn't know Black Sabbath. She'd know Ozzy from the TV show.
That's amazing.
I know, man. It's just hilarious. Musically, man, you've done a lot with a lot of people. Is it possible to have like a top 3 musical experiences? Could be in the studio, could be out of the studio, could be with somebody, could be on your own.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's well, that experience with Alanis at that UK Hall of Fame, and really like the entire. This is probably going to sound like I'm kissing up or something, but the experience, the Alanis overall experience, has been great because it's such a family of people, and I love everybody that I get to work with in that scenario. And we've done
great, man.
Like we've been to India, we played this gig, and there was a free concert in Rome at this place called Piazza del Popolo, which is this huge square. And I want to say that was really memorable because it was in the summer. So we were sweating and just dying in the heat, but it was over 100,000 people there maybe. And
holy crap,
really incredible night. And oddly enough, my wife was living in Rome at the time and was there at the gig. It's a long story. We dated a long time ago, and then kind of, it didn't work out because of my stupidity, and then later kind of reconnected. But anyway, that gig is a memorable one for sure with Alanis. And then
really cool.
We also opened for the Rolling Stones in 2005.
Holy shit!
one of those shows was on the day of my birthday at Giant Stadium.
Oh my God.
So on my birthday, opened for the Stones and met Keith Richards that day. So it was kind of a memorable, do you have any meaningful
was any meaningful interaction with him, or was it more just like a hello, how you doing kind of thing?
Oh, no. It was like, did you read his book by any chance?
I haven't. I started reading it and I haven't finished it.
So good.
Yeah.
But there was a just quick story connection in his book that was fun for me, because they kind of said, don't worry about, if you run into any of the Stones during this week that you're with them, please don't ask for, pictures or anything, because you're going to take a group photo at the end of the thing. And we were all, of course, we want to be respectful, and we're not going to do anything like that. And, and it's funny, before iPhones, oddly enough, it was 2005. So we all had cameras maybe, but we weren't going to be, overly weird about it. But we're sitting backstage and Keith walked by with his sort of group of guys toward the stage. So we all kind of went, like Dave, the other guitar player, just went, we got to go see where he's going. So we walked up to the stage, and he had this staff, like a walking stick with like beads and leather tied to the top. And he's walking with it. And we were all just thinking, well, let's just go up and see what happens. And he's standing around talking to the crew, and it had rained the night before, and the gig was at Giant Stadium outdoors. Right. So I see Dave make a move, and I follow him, and he just goes over to Keith and hey, Keith, we just wanted to say hello. We're Alanis' band. We're opening the show. Oh, right. And he said, one love, he said to all of us, and shook our hands. And he holds up his stick, and he said, I just came out to shake a stick at the weather. And that was all I needed. I was like, I just wanted some great Keith moment.
You just got it.
Perfect. Wow. He was trying to do a rain dance basically. And
oh, legit. He wasn't kidding. He was like,
no, he wasn't kidding. I came to shake my stick at the weather and make sure it doesn't rain on our show. And it didn't. We got through the show fine. And then cut to reading his book. He talks about that walking stick in the book.
Oh, he does. Very
So it's kind of fun to read it and go like, oh, I actually experienced that. I saw you carrying that stick and, being a shaman basically that you are,
See, I've been doing shit wrong, like changing plans. I got to get into the stick thing, man. Because
shake a stick at the weather, man.
That's what I got to do.
Works.
Wow.
So that, and I would say another crazy experience was going to Iraq and playing on a USO tour with this band called Vertical Horizon that I played with for a little while. Matt Scannell, who's the singer, it's his band, and I think he goes really often actually, but there was one year that I got to go, and it was right as they were drawing down the troops. It was 2010. So we went to Iraq and played on army bases and like stayed in Baghdad in what used to be Saddam Hussein's palaces. And wow. I mean, I saw things I never imagined in my life I'd get to see over there. So it was well, just this part of the world, it's not like it's open to tourism necessarily. Like you're there, and it was eye opening for me because I'm definitely of the more hippie, let's all love each other, while at the same time I want to be supportive and play for the troops, and they were so appreciative of like, I remember walking around on the bases, and we're in civilian clothes, and so these soldiers would walk by and go, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And I'm here with this band. We're gonna play some music for you guys later. And it was so moving because they would sincerely look you in the eye and go, "Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming here. Where did you come from? Los Angeles. Wow. Thank you. And it really meant a lot. It was like I feel it, and just as I'm talking about it, like it was emotional to hear them, because you realize, wow, we really did come a long way. Like we flew into Kuwait, and then we took a military plane into Iraq, and it was crazy.
Yeah. Wow. That's a real honor, man, to do something, I think. Yeah.
Big time. It was a really, I don't know if I'll ever experience something like that again. I hope so, but I've been lucky enough to travel a lot of places, but that was pretty eye-opening.
Man, and I can swear I spoke to somebody else who played with Vertical Horizon like recently, and I'm drawing a blank here, man. I know I don't. Just to your point earlier, it didn't sound like you're kissing up. I've heard that same thing dozens of times when you've done and worked in a situation where that particular situation has literally changed your life, I totally get it. I don't think it's kissing up. It's like, hey, this thing changed my life and that's been great. You know, I don't think so. Man, so you grew up in Simi Valley. What was your childhood like?
It was really good. It was, I was born and raised in California. I was born in Long Beach, and when I was about 3, I think my dad got work that took us up, and he moved us into Simi, Simi is really, I always tell people it's almost like anywhere USA. It happens to be in Southern California, but it's very suburbia, you know, but it's definitely got the California, you know, I rode skateboards and rode bikes and I lived on this dead end street that at the end of the street, we called it the Wash, but it's this cement kind of, it kind of goes like this and it goes up on either side. So that was our skateboard park.
Sure.
And people from all over town would come to skate at this place where I grew up. So that I get to just walk down the street and, you know, and then behind that was our little bike trails. And there was a farm at the end of the street with cows.
Oh, wow.
And then the hills. So we'd run around in the hills and go on hikes and like ride our bikes and skateboards. And so it was good. And I had a whole group of friends that a few of them I still am in contact with that I've known since I was 5 or 6 years old.
Wow. That's amazing.
That are, you know, they're more like family members than friends at this point. Like we're, you know, like brothers. And so, grew up, just, you know, we were all probably just terrible to each other and then great friends and, you know, just like kids are. And then, my mom is a singer and performer.
Really?
That's one of the greatest performers I've ever seen, actually. And so she got involved right away with the community theater out there, which was, at the time it was called Horizon Players. So it was kind of this bastion of art and arts and music that was in this theater space that they had out there. And they would put on shows like, you know, Fiddler on the Roof, Gypsy, Sound of Music, West Side Story.
Sure.
So there were all these, I had this weird mixture of like playing with my friends, all these knuckleheads that I grew up with. But then my mom would have these cast parties that would go till 3 a.m. of these people like playing piano and singing and like, you know, I would go and see the shows and she would be the lead and singing and acting in these shows. And it was really powerful place to be around because, you know, I had crushes on all the actresses. And like when I was 10, she asked me if I wanted to start performing and being in any of the shows. And I was like, what do I have to do? Well, you have to go sing and audition. And so I got up and sang and she did it with me. And we did this little song and dance. And I performed in shows with her from maybe 10 years old till about 14.
So what made you pursue music over acting?
Guitar, music, like rock and roll, basically.
Everyone loves guitar, man.
Dude, your podcast, I'm telling you, that title is a powerful title. I had always wanted to play music, I think. And I had a friend in junior high school who kind of just lit the fire under me, whether he knew it or not. And he was in 7th grade. We're 12 years old and he was already in a band that played the talent show at my junior high school. So that to me was
pretty impressive.
And he played bass, oddly enough, like this guy, Bob. And he said, you know, you should play guitar. And if you play guitar, we could have a band. And I was like, great. Yeah. Simple as that. You're right. If I just get a guitar, we'll have a band. And that, you know, my 12-year-old brain.
Of course.
So I started asking for a guitar and my dad was a music lover, but not rock and roll. He was classical, opera, jazz. So the line I always got from him, no, if you start playing guitar, you're going to get into the drug scene. That was the line I always remember hearing, the drug scene. There's a scene.
It's so funny.
Full of drugs and guitars. And that's what's going to happen if you play guitar. So I kept on him. And a couple of years later was at the mall with my mom. And there was this $30 acoustic, you know, nylon string guitar at this record store. And I said, come on, Mom, please, please, please. And I still have it. She bought that.
Do you really?
Yep.
That is wild. And that's so funny that your dad didn't want you to play guitar because he thought you'd get into drugs. But without the guitar, you wouldn't get into drugs.
Exactly. No, there aren't any, you know, coke snorting Wall Street, you know, like you ever see the Wolf of Wall Street?
Never. It's all guitar driven.
It's all rock and roll people. The funniest thing that we laugh about on the Atlantis tour bus is like, nobody smokes cigarettes. There aren't any tattoos. There aren't any, you know, like we're all have kids. Well, you know, we're, you know, half of us, I think, don't even partake of, you know, any drugs or alcohol. Like I like to have, you know, wine, or, you know, I don't have that addiction thing. Luckily,
sure,
I got lucky in that respect, but, yeah, we're a pretty clean living bunch, but anyway, so yeah, started playing guitar and, but what were we talking about? Simi Valley. So Simi Valley was great because by the time I started working at the music store and having bands, I got to meet.
You probably knew everybody from your mom too.
Well, my mom, that was more the acting thing. Like that was its own thing, really.
Okay.
You know, but musicians, I got to meet a lot of musicians and sort of start, you know, interacting with people and having my own bands. And yeah.
Were you like an only child? Did you have brothers or sisters?
It was a weird thing. My parents when they got married, it was their second marriage. So my mom had kids and my dad had kids. So it was very Brady Bunch.
Yeah. That's not weird now, of course.
Right. Yeah,
now it's like, oh, but that's it. I got some weird shit. I want to hear that, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, no,
so they got married and they had me. So I was the only child. I was the youngest
out of the mutual.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So the youngest sister to me is 7 years older than me. So they were all into music and listening to music. Which was great for me because I had 45s, which a lot of people probably these days don't remember what that is, but there were like, you know, Led Zeppelin and Beatles 45s that they would hand down to me and I'd play on my record player. And, you know, and I remember just music because I lived in a cul-de-sac on a dead end street. So the big thing was people would crank their stereos. So I associate certain records with growing up, like Frampton Comes Alive. Like when that record came out, it was all over the neighborhood, people listening to that, or like Neil Young, Hey, My,
yeah,
like,
Out of the Blue. And, the electric, yeah.
And then of course, which I've heard people talk about, Kiss, which that was, like I loved the Beatles and Zeppelin from an early age, but I didn't really know why. It was just because they were playing it for me. And my brother was like this huge influence, turning me on to all kinds of music. But then, like, you know, my friends on the block showed me Kiss Destroyer, you know, and I rode that was the first record I ever bought. I rode my bike to the record store and bought Kiss Destroyer when I was 10. And that, you know, that was
so funny, man. You know, there was a thing, because those guys, or at least Gene was from the Bronx, and I think Ace was as well. And I remember when I was in 8th grade, somehow everybody was passing around, this is Ace Frehley's number.
Oh, how funny.
Do you want to call it? And I'm like, and I've never been a guy that's like, I'm like, no, like that's just not, I've never been like a starstruck,
right?
You know, like, no, you know, but it was so funny. I remember it was like all the hip kids that listen to Kiss were like, hey man, I got Ace's number. It was like, you know, not, I got some good weed. I got Ace's number. That's okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. Let me know how that goes.
Yeah,
let me know what you do with that. What were some of the lower points, Jason, that you might have had to deal with throughout, you know, or during your career? Could be, you know, musically, could be personally, business, either. Just maybe challenges that you had to deal with.
There were times, like right before I got the Alanis gig, business was pretty slow.
Yeah.
I remember, I have this old Gibson acoustic guitar from the 50s I was showing you earlier.
Yeah, gorgeous.
That
guitar.
like is worth a fair amount of money, and I remember thinking I had to maybe sell it because, you know, maybe I you know, to pay the bills, who knows?
Yeah, sure.
And I remember actually Joel, the person who commended me for the Alanis gig, I remember we were on the phone and I'll never forget. He said, "Don't sell that guitar, man. Don't sell it." And he was so right, because not only did I not sell it, I remember hanging up with him, picking that guitar up, and wrote a song.
Oh, cool.
And so there was, you know, I always say there's songs in guitars. So there were a lot of songs in that guitar, but that was kind of low. Like I was starting to panic a little bit about like, what am I going to do? Do I get to keep being a musician? Do I need to figure out something else to do? And there was another time it was about 5 years ago. My dad was sick and passed away, and I'm
sorry about that.
I was in the thanks. Yeah, I was in the middle of turns out I fill in a lot, but I was filling in playing with Kelly Clarkson, and she was doing this Christmas.
Wait a minute, for Aben?
No, well, I did. This was funny. So
that's weird because you're in LA. That's a Nashville gig.
Well, I know their tour manager was Alanis' tour manager at one time.
Okay, so that was a connection.
So there was a connection, yeah. So the first call I got was this call for the Christmas thing she did. And she did this Christmas special and a Christmas record that's really a great Christmas record. I'm not a huge fan of Christmas music, but she made a fantastic Christmas record. And I got asked to fill in for the other guy that plays with Aben at the time, this guy Corey, who's a great guitar player, musician, plays fiddle like crazy. I was like, I don't play fiddle, just so you know. And they were, no, it's fine. But it just so happened that I had to be in Vegas doing these rehearsals with them. But my dad had fallen sick, and I came home. I was home, and my family had this big meeting, and my dad was in the hospital, and they said, listen, you need to go. Let's just get through the weekend. I think he's going to be okay. And so it was hard. It was hard to leave, and go back and go back to the rehearsals. And what wound up happening was they tried this sort of last thing with his health and to see if it was going to work. And it kind of didn't. And luckily Kelly ended up taking a day off.
Oh man.
So I said, okay. And I rented a car and I drove back on that day off from Vegas to where my parents live, which was kind of out toward the desert here in California. And I was able to be with him a little bit, like right before he passed, and then drove back to Vegas and the next day basically got
wow. Yeah. Man, I'm really glad you get to. I'm really sorry you had to deal with that, but I'm glad you get to go back. That probably made a lot of difference to you, man.
It did. Yeah, it was huge. And my wife and I at the time were kind of we're new in our relationship, and it was a big deal. Like, she came out to Vegas to be with me. And,
oh, that's nice, man.
Yeah, it was like,
you said, man, I got to keep this one.
It was a lot. It meant a lot to me.
Well, that's a pretty nice thing in a new relationship. You know, that shows like a lot of empathy and warmth, you know?
And I'm not, I try to get better at it lately. I'm not good at asking for help. I don't know how, you know.
Really? That's really weird, because usually when you have a good childhood, that's easy.
Well, I mean, there were definitely hiccups in my childhood. There was a lot of stuff that we could talk for hours about, believe me, that you know, it was, there were so many things that were really idyllic, and then there were problems too. You know, my dad was a complex guy, and you know, there's definitely some things I had to deal with in my adulthood that I had to sort of, you know, learn about myself, and just things about awareness and kind of being in the world as an adult that I had to sort of do some work, personal work, to get past. But yeah, hearing my wife on the phone going, okay, well, I have a flight that I can get on at 11, so I'll be there at noon. And I was like, what? Well, yeah, I'm going to come out there. And it just, like, you know, kind of blew my mind. I went, oh, wow, this is real. This is serious. Like, you care. Okay, good.
You're either really sweet or really codependent. We'll figure.
I think I'm the codependent.
We'll figure out which one, but right now that's okay.
Oh man, let me tell you, I won some kind of like lack of codependency trophy by picking the person I pick, because she's like some kind of Jedi about not being codependent.
That's
I think.
Good, man. That's good.
I then had to learn how to not be. Anyway, so yeah, that was pretty tough. But it's funny because Aben then a couple of years later called me up to see if I wanted to do he's stage right. The other guy was stage left. He's like, hey man, I don't know if you're available, but would you want to come fill in for me? My wife and I are having a baby. What he didn't know was that I was having mine exactly a week after he was having his.
My God, that is wild.
Well, pretty sure his wife had a C-section as well. So you know how when you have a C-section, you can kind of plan what day you're going to do it. So, I didn't say anything. And I said, well, I looked at the dates and I was like, well, I talked to my wife. I said, and she's pregnant, you know, she's like out to here pregnant. And I said, they want me to come do this. And she goes, well, yeah, do it. You know, you'll be back in time.
Because she knew your date.
Yeah. Okay. And then I get into rehearsals with them and everybody was like, wait, what? You're having a baby too? You know? So we have funny, you know, she had a gig at the Staples Center here in LA, and there's my wife on the side of the stage, just, with our 1 week, to go, pregnant. Like, so yeah, so Aben and I actually got together finally with our kids last year, and
he's a great guy, man.
He's such a great guy. Yeah,
such a nice guy, man.
Little boy. They make jokes all the time about there's going to be an arranged marriage between
between your two kids. That's funny, man. Yeah, he's a really sweet guy, man. And it was really cool. He called me up one day. I'll tell you after this, because it's quite funny. I can't say it on the air, but he called me up, told me something funny. But he's a very nice guy, man.
Really great,
very cool dude.
That whole camp is super cool.
And thanks for sharing all that, man. Again,
sure.
Flip side, is there any things that you did that at the time were out of your comfort zone, maybe, but turned out to be really big breakthroughs? Like you're glad you did it.
Oh, good question. I guess, yeah. I would say like. Out of my comfort zone would be, just going in and auditioning for Alanis probably was something that was a little bit, even though I felt this weird mixture of nerves, but also just kind of excitement about doing it.
Yeah,
but
sure.
it definitely wasn't something that I was used to doing,
Yeah, it turned out to be great.
Turned out to be life-changing. Yeah, for sure.
That's great, man.
That was a key one for sure. And then personally, I would say calling my father-in-law and mother-in-law to tell them I was going to ask their daughter.
Oh, you did that? Really?
Yeah. Yep. And they were surprised. They didn't. My wife is really hush hush about things with them sometimes, and so they were really surprised and like had no idea she was that deep in a relationship with somebody.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Oh, okay. And they're the greatest people ever. So
was that your first marriage?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah. I've had some really long relationships that were probably, as long as some people have been married, but this was the first.
Hey, that could be a week nowadays, man,
Right. True enough. Yeah. How long were you married? A month. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, man. That's really wild. That's funny. I remember the first time I met my wife's. She's from England, my wife, and I remember she put me on the phone with her mom one day, and the mom said to her, she goes, "You've never put me on the phone with," I don't know if she said a boy or a man. I was 29 at the time, but she said, "You never put me on the phone with a boy ever."
Yeah.
I don't know.
No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah. Man, let's talk about music and gear for a little bit. What are the top 2 or 3 best concerts you've seen? I know you've seen a lot of shows, or I think you've seen a lot of shows.
I have. There are so many. It's hard. Yeah, it's kind of a hard one to. Paul McCartney I saw in the 90s when he first started kind of touring again, and like Linda was still in the band. It was the Flowers in the Dirt tour.
That was a great band, man. When Linda was in the band.
Oh my God, it was. I'm like, you've probably heard this over and over again, but for me, the Beatles. I heard somebody describe it this way: that when you love the Beatles the way I love the Beatles, they're sort of over here. Like you sort of take them out of everyone else and you go, okay, well, let me just set them aside because of my reverence and love for the Beatles. Now we can talk about everybody else, so you know, they are over here.
Yeah.
Like that's how emotionally connected I am to that music. And then I love all this other music too, like, Hendrix and Zeppelin and everybody you could imagine. But so seeing him, I always talk about this moment in the concert where he played Maybe I'm Amazed.
Oh.
And it was like, at that point, it was about halfway through the show. And I had a great seat. A friend of mine scored me this like 9th row center, like amazing seat. He played that song. And I remember thinking like, you could stop and I'll be good.
Yeah, that is such a great song.
Good night right now. I'd be totally happy. And he played for, he kept playing, but so that show was a great show. I got to see Radiohead a lot. I'm a big Radiohead fan.
Great band.
I got to see them in the 90s and early 2000s a lot. Prince, Jeff Beck. I got to see this amazing Jeff Beck show at the House of Blues. It's funny, you interviewed Lyle Workman.
Yeah.
And a bunch of us were hanging out watching Jeff Beck that night, and Lyle was one of the people that was there, and he gave one of the greatest quotes that I still use. We were all walking out, and it was a bunch of guitar players, all of us together, and he goes, He goes, well, that sure made me feel like a guitar owner. That's Lyle Workman, right? Who's
who's the most amazing, like literally one of the greatest guitar players I've spoken to.
Yeah, but Beck was just he's just this magician. And so, made me feel like a real guitar owner. I was like, I hear that.
Who was he? Did he have a guitar player with him that time?
Jeff Beck?
Yeah. Or was he, because he's toured with Jennifer Batten for a few years.
No, it was just him. He had a keyboard player. He had that girl, Tal is her name, I think.
Tal Wilkenfeld, yeah.
Yeah. And I think Vinny Caliuta was playing drums, and God, it was great.
He's had some great drummers, hasn't he?
Yeah. Just musicians in general. This cellist that I know was just out playing with them that I would have loved to see that show. She's this great cellist that I know. But anyway, yeah.
Very cool, man. So let's talk about gear. What's your go-to guitar right now, and what other two would round out your top three?
I play this Les Paul Standard a lot that I have.
The black one?
No, it's a Sunburst. It's got a Bigsby on it.
Okay.
It was one that I got from Gibson, or like it's not even an old guitar. It's a 2004. And it's funny, I've wanted to find reasons not to like that guitar, because the neck wasn't right away the kind of thing where I loved it, but I've done things to that guitar that, like the pickups that are in it, and I had it refretted with taller frets. I put the Bigsby on it, and it's also a friend of mine, this great luthier that used to work on my stuff a lot, but he lives a little far away. This guy named Tracy Longo, who's an old friend of mine from the guitar shop. Actually, he set the guitar up so that the neck pickup, now both pickups, I have it wired that way, but he's like, do you use your tone knob very much? And I said, no. And he said, well, because I wanted to split the coils, kind of like Jimmy Page. So he said, look, I can make it so when you roll your tone knob off, when it's in the 0 position, it'll be a single coil. And as you roll back in, you'll have the full humbucker. And I thought, that sounds like a great way, instead of having a push-pull pot or something.
Yeah.
So he wound up doing that to both tone pots on that guitar. So that guitar would be the one that, like, if I had to go fly somewhere and just bring one guitar, I can get by and get like Telly and Strat sounds out of that guitar. And honestly, I've had sound guys that go like, man, that guitar sounds great, and it does. It's a fantastic, just like, it's one of those things. It just sounds really good. And but I have so many guitars that I love.
But just hold on, I want to ask you just one question. Sorry. Tall frets, what does that do?
It, for me, makes vibrato a little easier, and it makes the guitar, it just makes it play a little easier. There's something about grabbing notes on a guitar with taller frets that it's harder sometimes to make a note ring out for me if the frets are really short, because I'm pushing down a little harder, and it just feels harder to make it work, to make the notes kind of ring, I guess.
Sure.
That's just me. I know a lot of people like taller frets. Some people don't. It depends on the type of player. And also what gauge strings you use probably falls into it. Like most of the Gibson guitars I have 11s.
Those are pretty. So you're playing a thick string.
I guess so. To me, they feel a little slinkier on Gibsons because of the scale length on a Gibson is shorter. So on a Fender guitar, a lot of times I'll play 10s.
Yeah.
Again, it depends. Like I have a 65 Jazzmaster that's this amazing guitar that I love, but because of that tremolo system, 11s feel better on that guitar than 10s to me.
How does that differ then in practical use than just a normal tremolo arm, normal Fender tremolo arm?
The one on the Jazzmaster?
Yeah, versus a Strat.
Oh, it's the Strat has like the strings and it's cut out in the back with the springs,
right.
And the tremolo. So the strings go through the body, right? Whereas on a Jazzmaster, it's almost more like a Gretsch guitar where the strings come across the top, and there's this sort of area of string length behind the bridge saddle that you can actually play notes. Like I love there's a guitar player named Nels Klein that plays with Wilco.
Man, I got Nels coming on my show. I just spoke to him like last night we talked. He's coming on in about like 3 or 4 weeks or something. Yeah.
He's like one of the guys that I love to watch play. And in that band, he's like just like such a Jedi with like so many different things that I love about using effects and using guitars. And so I admittedly steal probably a lot of the playing behind the bridge wacky notes from him that he does. And same on my Gretsch.
Man, send me some questions. I'll remind you after this. Send me some questions. I'll ask him.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I will. No, he's great. I love his playing, and his approach is super cool.
Yeah. He's a very nice guy to chat with. Well, okay, cool. So thanks for explaining that. Okay, so Les Paul's number one. What would be number two?
Oh man, again, it's hard. It's fun once, like, I'm at a point where I have enough guitars that I've always wanted that I get kind of, you know what I mean? It's a lot of place to be like, look at my studio, and I go like, wow, I have a couple Les Pauls, I have a couple Telecasters. There's a Telecaster that I got from a custom shop, one that's really, really beautiful sounding guitar that it feels like a vintage guitar. That one's great. That Jazzmaster I mentioned. There's I have a 67 Gretsch 6120 that's a hollow body. That I don't tour with it a lot. I have another Gretsch that I bought that's a newer one that I bring out. Sure. That sounds really good. But the other guitar that I really, really love is this Gibson Explorer that it's a 83. I bought it when I was 17 years old. I bought it at the music store when I worked there. And it was kind of the first really good guitar I ever bought. And I still have it. And our drummer, we always tell this story, but the drummer that plays with Alanis, Victor, is an old friend. So we knew each other in Simi Valley. And we played in this battle of the bands.
That's crazy that you guys grew up together, man. And now you're playing professionally together. That's and we're not short on gratitude about it. Like, we look at each other all the time and just smile, going, how amazing is it that we get to do this? For you guys, man.
And he was in another band, like we had long hair and we're in our, just out of high school bands and, at the roller rink, and I had that guitar. And so when he started playing with Alanis, he was like, you still have that Explorer? You gotta bring that guitar on tour. And, so I bring that out and play it.
That's really cool. Just for nostalgia's sake. For
nostalgia, and it's a great guitar. I have to say, like, I just put a new pickup in it actually, and it made it like even better. And it's a fantastic, like, now when I think about it, it's a vintage guitar, 1983. Oh, yeah. It's like,
is that mini humbuckers on that thing?
No, full humbuckers. No, that's that. So that guitar is super fun. It's a great
very
guitar.
Cool, man. Yeah, so I think you got some. Yeah, that Strat was gorgeous. It was a black Strat. Was it a 56?
It's a 64.
64. Jason's got a beautiful guitar right there. It's black with like a rosewood neck and was that a mint green? Or was it white? I couldn't see. I love that. I would like a Fiesta red. Yeah. Strat. Are they going to do ebony again now? I read something about that because I love those. I have one. I play this mostly. It's just a black Strat with an ebony neck.
That's kind of rare for a Strat to have an ebony fretboard. That's like a Gibson Les Paul custom fretboard kind of thing.
It's in 2015, Fender put out these 7 guitars. They were, quote, limited editions, which meant there were probably like 5,000 of them. But they were called, it was a certain series, 7 of them. And this one was called a Blackout Strat. And I got this right when I first started playing. I saw this, someone was playing. I'm like, man, that is gorgeous. Because you can't really see it from here, but there's little flecks, kind of colored flecks in here. I just but the neck was just amazing, man. It just felt so good. I love that ebony neck. So,
it's a really hard wood and adds a certain brightness, I think, sometimes.
I just like this. I'm not good with maple. I like it. I like to have a little more tactile.
Right.
For me, probably because I'm such a bad player that I need any kind of sensation I can get. What's the best amp and best guitar you've ever owned or played?
Amp. I'm lucky enough to have amps that I really, really love. I have a couple of copper panel AC30s from the early 60s that are just mind blowing how great they sound. I think it's a 73 Marshall Super Lead 100 watt.
Holy crap. You got some great amps.
That amp sounds so good. And it's funny because I wasn't taking it out because it's so loud, but with Alanis, we have in-ears that we use on stage, and then all the amps, it's kind of a clean stage. So all the cabinets are off stage, like in a trunk. So I wound up on this last tour, I went, wait, my cabinet's in a trunk. I could bring my Marshall out and not worry about the volume. And so I was running, our sound guy was like, he was like, that sounds really good. So I was running at the same time. I was running an AC30 head and my Marshall at the same time, just both of them on.
That's crazy, man.
Just to be, I was like, well, why don't I just run the 2 amps that I really love? And
there's 2 guitar players on that gig.
Yeah. You should speak to Julian. The other guitar player, Julian Coriel, is a great, incredible, mind-blowing musician. But yeah, so we've been trying to exercise our it's funny because we did a gig in Israel last year and they rented backline for us because all our backline was somewhere else, and we just asked for Marshalls, and we were looking at each other going, why aren't we just playing through Marshalls all the time? They sound so good. And but there's also I have like a newer I don't know if you've probably heard guys talk about the divided by 13 amps.
Oh yeah that's isn't that Peter Stroud's company?
No, he does 65.
Right.
Yeah.
I know who that is. Yeah, I've spoken to that guy. It's funny enough. Forgot his name, but yeah.
Maybe Dan. Is it Dan and Peter that make them? Yeah.
No, divided by 13.
You spoke to Divided by 13, Frederick.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
He's great. I have one of his amps that he made early on when I was starting to work with Alanis, and so that guitars. Again, I probably have the ones that I really, really love, like my old Strat, my old Gibson acoustic, the Gretsch. I love this 67 Gretsch that I have. It's just every time I play that guitar, it just feels so good. And the old Jazzmaster that I got, the tech that was working for me with Alanis for a while found that guitar and just said, it's a good one, man. It's a good one. If you decide you want to get it, let me know. And I ended up selling a couple other things and said, okay, I think I want to do it, but that's a guitar that is a vintage, beautiful guitar that I actually tour with. Yeah. No, the Jazzmaster.
Oh, the Jazzmaster. Yeah.
I kind of don't want it to sit. Like I had it refretted. I put there's a mastery bridge that you put on them that most people put on the Jazzmasters to make them kind of usable. Because the stock bridge, if you have a heavy hand, which I kind of do, the strings will kind of pop out of the bridge saddle.
Oh, okay.
So the mastery bridge is this really beautiful precision kind of made thing that I think Nels uses, and Elvis Costello and all these guys that I love that play Jazzmasters. I was like, well, I just put it on sight unseen. I was like, I know I have to get that bridge because that's what everybody that I love with these guitars. So why don't I just do it right away? And it's a great guitar.
Very cool, man. Desert. I'll ask you this one too. Do you remember the first record you purchased?
Yes, it was Kiss Destroyer.
It was Kiss Destroyer. Okay.
I rode my bike. I have clear. There was this record store called Tape King in Simi, and I rode my bike there and spent. I think it was like $4.75 and
Tape King. That's such a That's such a like 70s name, right?
This shop
Tape
was
King.
It was exactly what you think. It had a head shop in the back.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Very mysterious. Like, what's back there? What are those pipes? You're a 10-year-old kid in this record store, and the guy that works there is a little stoned, and Kiss. That was my first record.
All right, Desert Island Discs, man. Top 3 knee-jerk reaction.
See, everybody, and I hear you ask this question of people.
Totally unfair question.
Today I would say probably Houses of the Holy, just because I figured out the Rain song, the open tuning for that song, and
it's such a great song, man.
Oh, it's so beautiful. That's one of those, like, because when I think of Desert Island Discs, I have to go like, what's the things that like I want to be on a desert island with and not too tired of, I guess. But it could change all the time. But White Album, that's probably the Beatles record that I always kind of go back to. And then it's hard after that, like Axis Bold as Love would be one. So would like maybe like something more R&B, like Sly and the Family Stone, maybe Stevie Wonder record, which is hard to pick again, like probably Songs in the Key of Life, but something like that,
Good.
It's funny because Axis Bold as Love, when I wanted to get into Hendrix, my brother gave me Axis Bold as Love, and I was a freak about Van Halen. So like I was listening to Van Halen nonstop. And so he probably went here,
Shut up.
And I turned the record over because I thought, oh yeah, where's Purple Haze? And, and it wasn't there. And I went, well, what did he give me? And I put the record on and I probably didn't get it right away. And then it sat in my record collection. Then I remember going back to it later when I was ready to kind of take in what was on that record. And now, like, I can't get enough of that record. Like, I love it so much. And of course, like, Electric Ladyland is.
Yeah, that's my Hendrix record. I like that one.
Love it. Yeah, I'm kind of geeky about Hendrix.
All right. So now we'll get into the heady stuff, man. The therapy session.
I need some. Good.
Which is scary. Well, not from me. You're not that messed up. You need it from me. Trust me.
I'll call my therapist after we get off the phone. And,
yeah, you'll need some after me, not from me.
Listen, I talked to this podcast guy, and I don't know what I said.
I'm all messed up. Man, what do you like most about you? And I know that's a tough question. That's why I want to ask it.
You know what's funny is I've heard you ask this question to people, and I've actually had to answer that question. I've done some writing work where
that's good.
That was one of the questions. Like, list some things that you like about yourself. And the friend of mine that I was doing the writing work with, I had to call him and say, oh, "Come on, what am I? Do I have to answer this question?" You know? And he was like, he said a really great thing. He said, "Just write anything. Just pen to paper. Write." He said, "Write that you think you're a good driver, and just start there, and then whatever comes after that, you know." And he was right. And if you look at the work that I wrote, you'll see I think I am a good driver, because I actually do think so. Because my dad was a little bit of a crazy driver, but he was a really, you know, good driver, and so was, you know, and they sort of taught me to drive early on, and so from there I was able to kind of very reluctantly go, okay, I also like, you know, and I had to make a list, you know. So now having to answer the question today, like I guess I would say I like that I was willing to kind of look at myself about 12 years ago and do some work the kind of work that
nobody wants to do.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. That was sort of like, it was framed around the idea of get to know who you are and be that person. So if you're talking about codependency and stuff like that, learn about the person that I am instead of worrying all the time about like, oh, what shoes is that guy wearing? And how's that guy playing guitar? And what did that guy do to get that gig? And should I get a tattoo? And should I, stop worrying about all that stuff and learn about who I am and what I like and what my opinion is and what, and then be that person instead of, cause man, I can, I don't know, just like anybody else, I can start to compare myself too much to players or people that I think are great, you know, for instance, like guitar players there's so many guitar players that I hear that just blow my mind, that can send me down that dark road of like, oh God, what am I going to do? You know, I'm never going to, you know, or I can go, oh man, that guy's great. What can I pick up from him? Or how can I learn a little more of that style if it's what I want to get into?
Sure.
So I'm more open to that, and I like that about myself, I guess, that I'm willing to.
Yeah, man, it's good for you. It's important.
Yeah.
You know what? I had to do this when I in the 90s, before I started working for myself. I was working at a sales job, and man, I had to make like literally 400 cold calls a week.
Oh, man.
And needless to say, when you're doing that, you're shitting the bed on most of them. And so, man, I think I might have been in counseling at the time. And somehow I read this, you know, it was before the internet, so it wasn't like yet informational. And I put this sign on my desk ahead of me, and it said, who you are. And there was a line, and it said, what you do. And it was a reminder that who I am and what I do are mutually exclusive. There might be some overlap, but what I do, that for me at that time, I can't let that define who I am.
And that's a tricky thing, man, because I've run into that as well, where you start to take apart separating yourself from who you are and what you do. And that concept, it's kind of a heady concept, I guess, to think about, but to go like, well, I'm a guitar player, I'm a musician, but who am I? Like if you're going to take it apart and say, well, do you have integrity? Do you have some humility? Do you have some,
do you have other relationships?
Do you have other relationships?
You
Do you
know,
show up for things? Do you, so yes, I'm a traveling, working, playing musician, but I'm also a father, a husband, a son, a human being in the world who's trying to treat people with respect and dignity and live the best example that I can to, it starts with me, right? It begins with me. Keep the focus on what I actually have some control over, which is myself. So then I can kind of operate in the world on some level and then not be afraid to share my opinions, like we touched on it a little bit earlier, but it was something else I had to learn, was to be able to be in a room and go, hey, can I make a suggestion? Like just to say that out loud was terrifying.
And you do it now, right?
Now when I do it,
for you.
The miracle of doing that is that thing we talked about earlier, which is if I'm willing to share an opinion that's just my opinion and not beat someone over the head with it, with the people, I've heard the term, you're shoulding all over yourself.
Yeah.
You should.
You should do this. Yeah.
You should do this. Like that doesn't get me anywhere. But if I'm able to go, hey, would you guys be willing to try this suggestion? And usually what happens is, sometimes it gets shot down. No, I don't think that's going to work. Okay, but at least I said it, and I'm not going home with resentment that they didn't. Well, they didn't try my idea. Oh, because they didn't read my mind to know.
Weird how that happens.
Yeah, and then the other great thing that happens is you say something, and then maybe it will be taken and used, or you say something and someone else in the room goes, "Oh, that's a great idea, and we could also add this," and then the thing that they add was something I never would have thought of.
Yeah. And that's where the magic happens, man.
Yeah. And then you're working together and all of a sudden it becomes this great thing that if you're all willing to kind of work together and take on the thing that is happening without any ego, then so that's where the magic starts to happen. And you're all kind of listening to each other, which again, when you're playing music with a group of people, you have to listen to each other and kind of be willing to sit back or move forward, with whatever you're doing and make the whole sound great.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad you're able to get that. I've done a lot of work on myself too. I think you have to, if you want to go anywhere pretty much. I mean, I don't know unless you have the rare personality that you just had your shit together. And I've spoken to some people that amazingly have. They're few and far between, I think, but, right. I certainly didn't. So, you just gotta. And
I appreciate having that awareness for sure.
Okay. 2 questions left in the interest of time. I know Jason's got to run. Toughest decision you've ever had to make or most difficult thing you've had to do?
Oh my God. Musically or personally, like either or
your call, man.
Yeah. Oh man, I guess, there's so many personal ones just in being a human, like the thing we talked about with my dad, or like I had a dog that I raised from a puppy that lived to be 15. And, I had to make the decision when she was really sick to,
I've done
go
that.
into the vet and have her, put her down. And that was awful. And, but, had to show up and be there for that. And then work wise, musically, there have definitely been gigs that I've had to sort of either say no to, or that I wish I could have done, but couldn't because I was already doing something else, which I guess I have a lot of gratitude there too, because luckily I'm lucky to be able to say that.
Sure.
that I actually had work, and some guitars that I've had to sell, that's hard, to oh man, sometimes I want to sell them. Sometimes I've just, if times have been slow, I've gotten rid of a couple things that I look back and go, I would have liked to hang on to that, but sometimes that's tough.
And last question, anything you regret not doing?
Well, not as much these days, but there are times where I regret that I didn't go to a university or a music school, and get that sort of a music education, because sure. I feel like I'm playing a little bit of catch up around some of that. So it's hard, it's like I have friends that one friend of mine that did go, who's this genius musician, was like, "You're doing just fine." When I tell him, "Oh, I should learn more of this," and he'll, kind of, it's a nice thing for him to say, like, give me a vote of confidence. "You're doing just fine, man. You're doing your thing." And so it's on me now to kind of go, all right, well, if I do want to educate myself, and I actually did sign up recently with an online course that this guitar player does that I really.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. This guy out of Nashville, this guy, Guthrie Trapp. I don't know if you've talked to him.
I know him.
Great guitar player, like just plays this country style thing that it's the thing that I really love and want more of in my playing. So I was like laying in bed around Christmas where it was one of those, like, holiday sale on, online lesson.
Yeah.
I'm going to push
Good
the button.
for you, man.
So it's fun. I can go on and, at my own speed, kind of pick up little things. And so that was
chicken picking.
Yeah. And that was a big regret for a long time. I always felt a little bit less than, because I didn't attend university or something like that. But if I'm realistic, I look back and I go, I had a different kind of education, and I learned a tremendous amount from
School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, and I learned from players that maybe people have never heard of, that I just, think are these amazing guitar players that I picked things up from that way,
Awesome.
So,
Jason, let me tell people where they could find you. First of all, he's going to be out. He's always out on tour with Alanis. Are you guys going out in 19?
She's a year shaping up right now. I'm starting to hear little things about, we're playing at the New Orleans Jazz Festival in April with her, which I just saw the lineup. It's kind of crazy. It's like the Rolling Stones and every band you can think of are on this weekend of,
Keith, my old buddy.
Right. Yeah. I will just be hanging out. So I think we'll be doing more with her this year from what I'm hearing, hopefully. And I think she's working on a record and then, so that, and then my project, Letters and Radio, hopefully get some of that music out soon. And,
absolutely. And like I said, please let me know. You want to come back on? We'll talk about Letters and Radio and play some of it, whatever you want, man. It'd be totally cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
And you can find Jason on Instagram and Facebook. His name is spelled Jason Orme, O-R-M-E. And also, if you are an up-and-coming band and you like Jason's work and what he's doing, he runs Back Porch Studios. He produces up-and-coming bands. So reach out to him on Instagram or Facebook and, let him know what you got going on and see if you guys have some commonalities and, whatever, can do some work together. Any final words of wisdom, man?
Oh my God. It just made me nervous. I have to put any wisdom out into the world. Oh my God. Be a good person.
Be a good person. That is.
Be the person. Try to be the change that you want to see in the world.
Be the change you want to see in the world. Why the fuck not? Right?
Exactly.
Hey man, thank you. And thank you very much for your support and enthusiasm of the show. It's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Of course. No, like I said, I'm an interview geek, so I love hearing people talk about the business and what they do and how they do it.
Thanks, man. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, share it with a friend on your social media channels. We appreciate your support and help with this. Please support and check out Jason Orme's music, both with Alanis and with his own stuff, Letters and Radio. Check him out on Instagram and Facebook. Again, it's Jason Orme, O-R-M-E. And check out, he's got some really cool stuff he does online too. Check him out on YouTube. With Alanis especially. You got some great guitars you're playing with her. Oh, God. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com, sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.